You are listening to Torah Treasures, a messianic perspective on the weekly Torah portion, featuring Rabbi Jason Sobel.
This week's Torah portion is Parasha Lekh Lecha. In it we read about the call of Abraham to go forth from his country to the land that God had promised him and his wife. In verse 5 of Genesis chapter 12 we read the following: Abraham took his wife Sarai and his brother's son Lot, and all the wealth that they had amassed, and the souls which they had made in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. In this verse, Abraham and Sarah take with them all the souls which they had made in Haran. Our sages say this refers to all the people that they had brought to faith in God. How did Abraham go about making disciples? What does this teach us about kiruv, outreach? What similarities are there with the Brit Chadashah's view of kiruv, that's the New Testament? As Messianic Jewish communities, what type of Talmudim, disciples, should we be making? Traditionally, Christian scholars hold that all the souls mentioned in this verse refers to the slaves and servants that Abraham and Sarah acquired in Haran. This interpretation is implied by most Christian versions of the Bible when they translate the Hebrew clause ve'et hanefesh asher asu becharan as all the people they had acquired in Haran. This, however, is not the most literal translations of the words nefesh, which literally means soul, and asu, which means to fashion or make. In fact, the verb asu is used in the creation account alongside the word bara, which means to create. Thus, many scholars and theologians hold that the verb bara, which refers to things that God created ex nihilo, out of nothing, while asa refers to things that God fashioned out of already existing matter. In light of this, our sages teach the souls that Abraham made in Haran, Genesis 12:5. This refers to all those pagan men and women that Abraham and Sarah brought to faith in the God of Israel, which shows that he who brings a stranger near and causes him to become a worshiper of God is deemed as though he created him. Genesis Rabbah. The primary way that Abraham and Sarah engaged in kiruv, outreach, according to our sages, was through chaknasat orchim, hospitality. Our father Abraham would bring people into his home, give them food and drink, befriend them, and attract them, and then bring them to faith and draw them under the wings of the divine presence. Hence we learn that a man who brings a single creature under the wings of the divine presence is accounted as if he had created him, shaped him, and articulated his inner parts. Sifrei Deuteronomy 32. What we learn from this is that kindness and hospitality are fundamental ingredients in outreach. Ultimately, if our outreach is going to be effective, we must open both our heart and our home to people in order to build meaningful relationships with them. Like Abraham, our primary goal is not to save souls, but to make souls, Talmudim, disciples for God. Often we forget that discipleship is the fundamental and long-term aspect of kiruv, outreach. Is this not what the Messiah taught when he said, "Go therefore, Lekh Lecha, and make disciples of all the nations, immersing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all the things that I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." If you look closely at the opening command of Messiah's mandate, you notice that there are several verbal parallels between what God said to Abraham in this week's Parsha, Torah portion, and what God says to us through Messiah Yeshua. These parallels are not accidental, but rather allude to the fact that Messiah's mandate to make Talmudim, disciples, is rooted in the divine mission God entrusted to Abraham, our father, and the Jewish people to be a light to the nations. In fact, Messiah often ate with people, fed them, built relationships, and showed great kindness in the course of his ministry. Let us follow their example. What type of Talmudim, disciples, are we supposed to make? We must remember that the word kiruv comes from the verb karav, which means to draw near. But what are we supposed to be drawing people near to? As Messianic Jewish communities, we are responsible for drawing people closer to the God of Israel through their Messiah, Yeshua. As a Messianic Jewish community, we are also called to bring people closer to the Torah, that they might enter into covenantal faithfulness and embrace the full inheritance that God has bequeathed to us through our ancestors, as well as connecting them to our people in general. By so doing, we honor God, help the individual, and ensure the survival of our people by strengthening their connection to the Torah and to the Jewish people. Therefore, let us be diligent and intentional about making disciples who are equally passionate and committed to Messiah Yeshua, Torah, the Jewish people, and the greater body of Messiah.